Okay, so in just a single moment, the whole political map of the Middle East gets completely redrawn. The assassination of Iran's supreme leader didn't just take out one man. It basically shattered the very foundation of a regime that's been around for 47 years. Let's break down what could happen next, because honestly, the outcome is going to have huge consequences for everything from global energy markets to regional stability and, yeah, the nuclear threat.
I mean, just think about that word, decapitated. It's such a sudden, violent end to a system that was built around the absolute authority of one guy for more than 30 years. So you got to understand, this isn't just a simple leadership change, it's a massive shock to the entire system.
Right? That is the single most important question facing global leaders, markets, you name it. Does the regime just collapse? Does it try to reform? Or does it consolidate into something even more dangerous?
To really get a handle on the scale of this crisis, first we have to understand why this one man was so incredibly important, and it all boils down to this core principle of the Islamic Republic.
This is the concept right here, Velayat-e Faqih. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it means the supreme leader isn't just a president or a king. He's seen as holding divine political authority. Khamenei wasn't just a figurehead. He was literally the keystone holding the whole system together. You pull that out, and the entire arch is at risk of collapse.
Now, if you were watching Iranian state TV, everything looked calm, right? They announced an interim council, they were projecting stability, but the reality on the ground? It's chaos. Power isn't being transferred cleanly, it's being scattered. It's basically a free-for-all now among all these competing factions, and not a single one of them has the kind of authority that Khamenei used to have.
And in this crazy power vacuum, there is one group that stands head and shoulders above everyone else. If you really want to know where Iran is headed, you have to understand the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. They're the ones who are going to decide what happens next. They're the kingmakers.
So what exactly is the IRGC? Well, it's way more than just an army. I mean, yeah, it's an elite military force for sure, but it's also this massive economic empire, it's the state's internal security police, and it's a huge political power broker all rolled into one. They're basically a state within the state.
Get a load of this number. The IRGC is estimated to control something like 40% of Iran's entire formal economy. That's not just military might, that is immense financial power. They have the guns and the money, and that's the combination that makes them the ultimate deciders in this whole crisis.
And the message they sent here was just unmistakable. Within hours of the supreme leader's death, IRGC missile operations just kept going without a single hiccup. This proves they're an institution that functions perfectly fine with or without a commander-in-chief. They have total operational autonomy.
Okay, so this brings us to the first and frankly the most probable scenario, what we're calling the garrison state. And this outcome is deeply, deeply concerning for international stability, because it means Iran doesn't collapse, it actually gets tougher, more militarized, and a whole lot more dangerous. This whole scenario is driven by a concept called the legitimacy coercion substitution trap. I know, it sounds super academic, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple and really powerful. When a new leader is weak, they need the military to stay in power. And well, that military support comes at a very, very high price.
So here's how the trap works. Any new leader is going to have this massive legitimacy problem, right? So to survive, they'll become completely dependent on the IRGC. In return for that protection, the IRGC is going to demand more control, a bigger budget, and a much more aggressive foreign policy. And the result? You get a garrison state. This quote from a professor at Tehran University, wow, it just sums up the new mindset perfectly. No more restraint, no more strategic patience. The new logic is that any weakness just invites an attack. And this isn't just talk, it's basically the new official doctrine of a state that feels like it's in a fight for its very survival.
But look, the garrison state isn't the only possibility. Let's take a quick look at the two other potential futures for Iran, even if they are a lot less likely, at least in the short term.
So on one side, you have the potential for a total regime collapse, driven by all these internal pressures. And on the other, you have this slim hope for a pragmatic pivot, where a new leader decides economic survival is more important than ideology. But both of these face some major, major hurdles.
I mean, the arguments for collapse are pretty compelling. You've got surveys showing a huge majority of the population wants a new system entirely. The economy is just in shambles. Society is completely exhausted. And the woman life freedom movement, it showed this deep secular rejection of the regime's core ideology.
But, and this is a huge but, here's the critical counterargument.
Regimes with a powerful, unified security force like the IRGC very rarely just collapse. They don't splinter, they reconsolidate power, and often they do it more brutally than before. A sudden implosion just isn't the most likely path here.
And what about that optimistic scenario, the pivot to being more pragmatic? Well, the problem here is institutional. The IRGC's entire budget, its power, its whole reason for existence is built on confrontation with the West. Diplomacy is a direct threat to their interests, and you can bet they are not going to let it happen.
So, after weighing all the evidence from our sources, what is the most likely outcome? And is there some kind of wild card that could just change everything? Looking at the next 12 months, the analysis is pretty clear. The garrison state is the dominant probability, sitting there at 60%. Regime collapse and a pragmatic pivot. They're both possible, but they are definitely outside chances. For now, the smart money is on a more dangerous, more militarized Iran.
But even with those odds, there is one factor, one single thing that could upend all of these predictions, one true unknown that could just change the entire game.
And that wild card is the IRGC itself. What happens if the kingmaker shatters? I mean, if competing factions inside the IRGC start backing different leaders, the one institution that's holding the state together could be the very thing that tears it apart.
And that leads us to this final, pretty chilling thought. An IRGC civil war doesn't lead to moderation. It leads to absolute chaos. And chaos in a nuclear threshold state, well, that is the ultimate nightmare scenario. The stakes just could not be higher.